Great.
Okay, so we're going. It's gonna be better if I can see it.
Check 1 2.
All right.
Check 1 2. Okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Nick's house. We're here with Jonathan, Jordan, Nick, and Andrew. I am Andrew, and we're talking about mental health. Why should we care about mental health, you ask? Hypothetically, of course. Well, there is an answer. You should care. And that's it. That's the end. No, I'm just kidding. That's not the end.
Well, because you're probably crazy, that's why.
Yeah, chances are,
we're all crazy.
You might be crazy without even knowing it.
We're all crazy down here.
Well, basically everyone knows someone who's affected by mental disorders and the like. We had an earlier discussion on guns, and this always comes up with like shootings and stuff. Congress is wanting to focus more on mental health support, so it's important. But that costs money, so we basically have to decide, as a society, like, who's going to take care of, who's going to share the most burden of individuals with mental disorders. And there's a whole bunch of them. I basically asked all the guys to go around and find something interesting about mental health and come back. So who knows what they came up with. Well, I think mental health is very closely associated with a person's uniqueness or individuality. So very important part of the person. So it can't be really taken away or separated from the person. So I think Jordan had a little bit more to say about the uniqueness aspect of mental health.
Yes, I do. I would like to introduce a rising buzzword in today's culture called neurodiversity.
Neurodiversity.
And so, what does that sound like to you guys?
Yeah, I know a little bit about it.
I know I've talked briefly about it with you. Yeah. So you don't get to answer this. Okay.
I'm pretty fresh to it. I'm pretty fresh because I just read the article right before we started recording, basically.
Okay. So
I'm not familiar with this term, so I'm probably a good one.
So, what is neurodiversity sound like to you?
Wow. Maybe we're all diverse in our neuro area.
It's really just a way to try to flip the script and point at the normies and say, well, you're the one that's the matter with it.
Yeah.
Because
gotcha.
They use this derogatory term called neurotypical, and so everybody who... So if you're neurotypical, that means you're boring and you're not cool and interesting like all the people that...
I don't buy that.
I like that a little bit.
You like it?
I added the couching statement a little bit because Nick's like, no.
Okay. So this guy, though, this is a guy who...
we're too unique.
John Elder Robinson, he is an adult on the autism spectrum, and he's a scholar in residence at College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. So, for those of you who aren't aware, College of William and Mary is a super hyper elite school, so this guy's pretty smart. And he explains neurodiversity as the idea that neurological differences like autism and ADHD are the result of normal, natural variation in the genome. And it tries to distance any type of deviation from what is from a nebulous norm. It tries to keep those people who don't fit in that category from being pathologized, as he would put it. Mm-hmm. So that sounds pretty great, right? That's awesome. Yeah, neurodiversity. All right. Let's not stigmatize people with mental illness. The problem is there's another dimension to this. There's like a political dimension to it that I think kind of ties in with like just critical theory in general. There's one of the more disturbing implications of this movement is that it stigmatizes any type of research that's oriented towards curing things like ADHD and autism. I listened to an interview on my way over here. It was on YouTube. It had about 300 views. It was between two young men who are on the autistic spectrum, and they were discussing the neurodiversity movement. One of them was pro, one of them was against. And the guy who was against the neurodiversity movement, he said, I want to be cured. and he was upset that one of the leading autism research company or organizations had dropped researching a cure for autism from their mission statement. So I mean I find that a little bit troubling. I mean, what do you guys think?
So I do have a few thoughts on autism specifically, because there's certainly a range of functionality or what's it called? There's low functionality, high functionality, however you want to phrase it, more politically correct than I can. On one end you have kind of Asperger's, what used to be known as Asperger's, now like high functioning autism or something like that.
Slight correction. I think that it's actually a separate category from high functioning autism.
No, I don't. It had been grouped there. I mean, there's disagreement, but I believe some people group it.
Okay. So
yeah, as of DSM-5, Diagnostic Statistical Manual for 5th edition. It's the most recent one, 2013. Put Asperger's like not a thing, and then it just lumped it in with like autism. Yeah. Okay.
So do you guys know the crazy backstory of Asperger's? How did that name that? No. He was a Nazi scientist. I almost said Nazi. He was a Nazi scientist who he sent some kids to death chambers, but some people think maybe he tried to kind of pull a Schindler, and he said, hey, maybe these different kids will be really good at science and math and stuff, and we don't have to make them socialize, because the whole Hitler's Youth thing, the whole thing with the Nazi Party was socialist, not just in its programs, but in its culture. Like, you had to be part of all these clubs, and it was like all the reporting on your neighbor and, giving these...
Sounds like an introvert's worst nightmare.
Yeah, and so he's like, well, these autistic kids, these Asperger kids, these kids that are highly focused on isolated things that they can do by themselves. Let's just let them do that. Let's build a factory and let them build stuff for us. And so he kept some of them from dying, but he also sent some of them to go die if they weren't going to be high functioning enough. But that aspect, the aspect of him killing some of those kids, was kind of hidden in the literature until recently someone did a book on him, and they're like, oh snap, and so they are trying to maybe change the name or like but yeah, so but
also a slight aside, so this interview I listened to, one of the guys was from New Zealand, and he didn't say Asperger's, he said Asperger's, and I like the way that sounds a lot better.
Which one sounds more German? I don't know.
I don't know.
Asperger's. I don't know.
Okay, so anyways, so neurodiversity. This is, I mean, I've pretty much made up my mind about this. Maybe you guys can correct me. But to me, it seems like it's one of those. It's so typical of many critical theory movements. It sounds really great and positive until you really get down to the weeds of what the proponents of this way of thinking, what the solutions that they're trying to push. And I'm in favor of the neurodiversity movement as long as it means treating people who do suffer from either suffering from mental illness that is definitely pathological, or whether they're somewhere on the autistic spectrum. Treating them with dignity, treating them with respect, not making assumptions about them, working to integrate them into society. But if it means sweeping things under the rug, pretending like things that are problematic aren't problematic, then that's kind of where I would draw the line on that.
I think what I was kind of aiming at earlier is a lot of those people once referred to with the Asperger's label, they didn't really see themselves like that, and they didn't necessarily see that they needed a cure. I mean, this is me overgeneralizing perhaps, but a lot of stuff I have read about this and high functioning autism. So there's kind of a split there. Not everyone agrees that there should be a cure, like you were saying. I have no opinion on the matter, but that's nice to be on the high end. if you're on the low end, maybe you can't even speak. So.
Well, nice for who? Because if somebody thinks a certain way to where they don't actually want socialization, then they probably don't feel like they're missing out on anything. So I don't know what you would mean by nice. I mean, ultimately, I do think that human beings are more fulfilled when they're in connection with other people. And have any of you seen the Temple Grandin biopic that Claire Danes did? We should have watched that for this. It's the best biopic I've ever seen of a living person. So Temple Grandin is high functioning autistic, brilliant, but she was almost like at a Helen Keller level of dysfunction when she was younger. She would just have fits. She would only eat like Jello and tiny little noises like fans squeaking or whatever would set her off, and she just couldn't pay attention to anything else but that. And then a couple things happened. She went, I think, to her aunt's house to work on a cattle ranch, and that kind of stabilized her a little bit. It was therapeutic to her, and she ended up building a cattle squeezer. I don't know the real name for it, but that cattle cage that it actually keeps the cow in place while they tag their ear or shave their hooves or something.
Right.
And
I heard
the pressure,
at least 2 interviews with her.
that she could trigger on collapsing this metal cage on herself. Calmed her down, and she had one in her college dorm room, and kind of getting in trouble because they're like, is this like a weird sexual thing? Like what the heck is going on? But anyway, Claire Danes lost like 50 pounds and does a spot on Temple Grandin impersonation.
Isn't Temple Grandin the one that designed all the slaughterhouses,
Yes.
like the modernized slaughterhouses,
Yes. And
to make
she
them more
had
psychologically
this uncanny
ethical?
ability to get inside the head of cows, and she's like, I have no problem killing cows, but we might as well make them live happier. And she's a very distinct way of speaking, which I did not do justice, but she's brilliant. She does talks now on autism and how mostly to parents of autistic children, how they try to focus on the strengths that come with thinking that way, and also ways to help them become more sociable. The whole reason I started on this is she certainly seems like she's a much more fulfilled person now that she's kind of quote unquote found her spot in society and know where she fits in after she's like a PhD in cattle science or whatever. But
slaughterhouse.
What a niche interest too.
Yes. Architecture.
Who would have thought that there would ever be a human in the world that would have a unique ability to get into the head of a cow?
Yeah.
And just how that could make the world a better place. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I'll save what I want to say for another episode, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess onwards to the next one, which is mine. I chose addiction. Kind of ties into our previous discussion on drugs, but not always with drugs is going to be an addiction. So you got all sorts of ones. You got gambling addiction, video game addiction, shopping addiction, sexual, food, drug addictions.
What's a sexual food drug addiction?
Oh.
It's a George Costanza in bed with a sandwich and having sex.
Yeah.
The best combination, according to him.
That's why I lump those together, No, they're not all the same thing, but...
You keep leaving crumbs in the bed.
I believe that the sexual and the drug addictions can become like, if you have one, you need to have the other kind of deal.
How many times do people, like, when they're done having sex, they have a smoke?
Yes.
Immediately right after, right?
Exactly.
Well, sometimes those may be paired because a lot of human traffickers will get the victims hooked on a drug so that they then are their slave.
That's definitely real, too. That definitely happens a lot.
Just like people having sex and smoking a cigarette, I don't think...
No, those aren't...
But I don't think most sex involves human trafficking.
No. But he is right
I'm just saying
he's making a separate point. He's not trying
those
to...
are linked in my mind for the reason that a lot of times the way that sex workers are brought into the trade is by their pimp, basically.
Yeah, that's different. They just straight up get them hooked.
Yeah.
And then.
So then they're dependent, and like, where are you gonna get your drugs if not from me? And so yes.
Yeah.
But having a smoke after sex that's definitely different.
Yeah.
But it's all true.
They basically were referring to like a little bit harder than cigarettes, but like I don't know if it was like LSD or anything, but they noticed that within the brain there was like reaction when they had the one that intensified the desire for the other. So it's like, oh, you got the drug, now you need the sex, or the sex, you got the drug.
Well, everybody knows when you drink, you want to smoke. Like that's ubiquitous.
Yeah, that might even be the same.
If you have memories associated with smoking.
Yeah, where everyone you're hanging out with, making happy memories with, they're smoking, and you're all drunk, and then there you go, you're roped in.
Yeah,
I know. There's a certain spot that I walk past in Baltimore, and I get flashbacks to this brief period in my life when I was hanging out with friends and drinking with them, and every once in a while I'd go out and have a cigarette, and so that's the only time I ever think, I could maybe go for a cigarette. Right now. It's just weird how that works.
Yeah,
I had never had a cigarette in my life, and I woke up from a nap one day with a craving for a cigarette. I don't know if there was somebody outside my window smoking a cigarette and it smelled really good or what the heck, but yeah, that was bizarre. I was like, I've never smoked one. I don't know what it would be like to smoke one.
But I think I haven't smoked in like 3 years because the last experience I had was horrible. Yeah. But anyways, that's a total tangent.
It's best to quit that, definitely. That'll kill you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, kind of goes along with cigarette smoking. Cigarette smoking is kind of similar to an addiction, but usually it's got something with more of an instant gratification or like a huge high. Like gambling has a huge high. Anyone that has won money at a gambling table knows, okay, it's a pretty darn good high. But, you know, the costs, financial costs, the long-term costs, those are not as immediate, and they may be long-term. So something with like generally immediate gain and long-term costs can be an addiction. Doesn't necessarily have to be a dependence, but it's a big problem in the U.S. And costs, I don't know how many dollars that would cost, or even how to quantify that, but it's got to be a huge number. I guess what they're trying to do now is they're looking at genome-wide association studies. So they look at the whole genome, trying to determine what genes are associated with which traits in humans, obviously. So using those, you know, we can definitely get a lot closer to pinpointing, like, there is a genetics aspect to this. There's also an environmental aspect to pretty much all mental disorders that I know of have one part genetics, one part environment that contributes to feeding this mental disorder or causing it, perhaps. With addiction, they're not really sure. The kind of jury's still out. But all sorts of people can have addictions, like shopping addiction. I mentioned you can buy more rings than you'll ever wear in your entire life. You know,
how many rings do you have, Andrew?
I believe I have 3.
This is actually an intervention.
Hi, my name's Andrew, and I own 4,000 rings.
It goes with watches and, you know, jewelry, all of that sort of stuff. Anyway, so
you're only supposed to have 9 golden rings. Or is it 10?
5 golden rings.
5 golden
Dang
rings.
it.
5 golden rings. It's almost December.
It's
Okay.
a little early for that.
I feel like I've trodden the addiction thing down enough. Jonathan, what?
Oh wait, no. Real quick on what you were saying while you're talking it. I mean, so do you have a solution? What would be your preferred approach to just addiction in general? Do you have that?
Good question. So don't feed the addiction. That is probably. I mean, I'm not an expert.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say don't feed the addiction. It seems to be
Let's
positive.
tell some stories. Let's talk about addictions in our lives, because everyone deals with it.
Well, real quick, I was just going to say, while you were talking,
I feel like we've done this before.
I was thinking about Nick's video that he shared with that German in a nutshell. How do you say it?
Oh, Kyrgyzstan. Yeah.
We should get a settled upon pronunciation for that, so we don't do that every time. Every time I try to bring it up. So the K-German video, the happy bunnies, was it bunnies or rats? The rats, in the rat paradise.
Yeah.
Didn't go
the
for
rats
the
in
drugs.
Vietnam.
They were able to get free of their vices just by replacing it with other things.
Another thing that released the dopamine and
or just something that didn't make them feel a lack. And
when they went back with their families, then.
So when we get to mine's about that. But
all right.
I like it, Jordan's idea.
So compulsive behavior.
Yeah.
We do. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, there's a lot of things we do compulsively that are good things. Like, I cannot go to bed until I brush my teeth every single night. And I haven't had a cavity since boot camp.
Nice.
So, I'd say that's good compulsive behavior.
Yeah.
I think what happens with addiction is you develop compulsive behavior for something that's negative, and it has a potential to cause like this negative feedback loop that just drags you down and down and down and down. So I know, like, I'm trying to think of. I don't want to get too deep into this.
Okay, I'll get deep.
That's closer to a dependence, but addictions specifically is just one thing. You got with the short term. I don't want to say like worldly, but like just temporal gains, like temporary gains, and then long term costs. That's like definitely addiction.
So in high school, starting probably in my freshman year, I was manorexic. I didn't know that I was. Multiple people in my life tried to talk to me and say, "Hey, man, I think this might be a problem," and I'd be like. And I thought they were like attacking me and ridiculing me, and I hated what they had to say. But then in college, I was working on my teaching credential, and we had to go through the DSM-4, which was all that was out at the time. And I have no idea how I got onto this, but I was reading. Oh, okay, it was because you have to be able to identify certain neuroses, I guess, in your students, because you're like a mandatory reporter for a lot of stuff, and so they try to help you pinpoint things going on in your students' lives. And I read the entry for anorexia, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I was anorexic. I was." So I'd already come out of it.
That's like not eating. Or
so how'd you come out of it?
So I have no idea how it works for other people, but for myself, at the time, I was chubby when I was younger. I'd gotten beat up for it. I think I've shared that before, and. The first time I started losing weight, I was so addicted to the feeling of losing weight, and in my mind, I identified being hungry with losing weight, and so the feeling of going to bed hungry was actually success to me. That I had control over what was happening and how I was going to be, and so for like 4 years, because into college, I was each day pretty much. I'd tell myself, okay, I'm gonna fast all day tomorrow. Almost every day, I would say I'm gonna fast all day tomorrow, and I'd wake up and around sometime between 10 and 2, I would go nuts. My body would start like shutting down and tell me, you need to eat, and I would find food. Like, I would purposely sometimes not take food with me to school so that I wouldn't have anything to eat. And then I would find or buy food or something, and I would just like, rah, rah, rah. And then but then I'd still be hungry, and my body would be like, no, don't starve me. And I'd get home, and then I'd just like binge eat, and then I'd feel awful. And I never binged and purged, so I didn't, I wouldn't stick my finger down my throat, but I just, I would feel awful. And I wrecked my stomach over that. It's better now, as far as I can tell, but just screwed up my stomach lining, and actually got such bad gastroenteritis, inflammation of the intestines, that I thought I was having a heart attack one night, but it was just deferred pain where my chest muscles started locking up because of the pain in my gut. Anyway, but in college, I started realizing that I wanted something more. I wanted something different. I wanted to not always be... Basically, there was a constant script running at the back of my mind of, like, coaching myself, like, you're fat, you're going to get fat. If you eat that, you're going to be fat forever. People are going to hate you. You don't want to be fat. Stop being fat. And so... when I was in Israel, actually, studying abroad, there were a lot of really cool people there, and I fell in love with a girl who, she walked into a room and I could tell, just the way that she was, she only ever thought about the other people in the room. And that's the main reason I was attracted to her, just because a lot of girls walk into the room and they're instantly aware of what everyone else in the room is thinking about her. This girl walked into a room and all she would think about was, how can I make every person in this room's life better and cheer them up, and I loved that so much. And I expressed my interest. She turned me down. Probably a good call on her part, but I still was in love with that idea, and I was very thankful that that my romantic feelings towards me showed me the beauty of that trait in a person, and so I wanted to have that so badly. I knew I could never do that if I had this constant soundtrack in my brain, because it was all focused on me, like, and so I basically had to take this step of faith where I'm like, screw you, brain, maybe I'll get fat, and I stopped thinking about it as much, and then I never did get fat, and I stopped destroying my stomach, and like, my journal entries for like 3 years were nothing about just like obsessive thoughts about food, about like, you know, how much I was going to cut more food out, and so
That reminds me of something a friend of mine he's recently got into like fighting. I don't know what form it is, but he posted something on Instagram that I thought was kind of profound. It's like no matter all other things being equal, the more relaxed opponent in a fight is always going to win, and I think that applies to a lot of things in life. Where
like a Homer Simpson style. He just takes those punches and he lasts the entire fight. And then he does one punch to the guy when he's tired and down he falls.
Well, if you're like obsessed with kicking an addiction, I guess, with the addiction itself, then that's where the feedback loop starts. Whereas if you move your focus into something, a more positive focus, like, oh, I want to spend more time with my family, or I want to go travel, and then suddenly you find yourselves in situations where like you can't do both. You can't do the travel and have this addiction.
And if you've chosen something worthwhile, it's easier to make that choice when it comes down to that ultimatum.
So there's that, but there's these types of addictions, and then there's addictions like methamphetamine addiction. Like, I don't think that there's different tiers, I would say.
Yeah. One of them specifically, well, not just one of them, but like drugs specifically affect the brain in ways that, let's say, video games cannot. Like physical, chemical stuff going on. So,
I mean, it's all physical, chemical. It's just like degrees of like drama, right? Like how much control.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any video games on my computer because once I start playing, I can't stop.
They're addictive, those things.
Yeah. And once a heroin addict puts that syringe in their vein for the first time, I believe, I don't know that there's very many people that are able to not get hooked instantly. It's an absolute override of the brain, brain chemistry.
Yeah.
That's why heroin's so bad, so terrible.
For sure.
But obviously, having a beer won't do that to you. You know, playing a video game potentially could.
Yeah.
I feel like there's other things you're building around that activity. There's like, okay, I'm comfy. Okay, work's over.
Yeah.
I'm chilling out, and so it's like all these associations go into one thing.
Yeah.
Whereas heroin is just put the needle in your vein, and now your whole life is over.
Nothing else would. Everything else would just go away. You know, and that's sometimes what they're looking for, is for everything else to go away. But
chemical oblivion.
Yeah. It's not the best.
Not the best. Yeah. So, mental health.
Oh, thanks for keeping us there.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all related. It's all related because I think a lot of addiction can lead to mental pathologies. It can also be caused by mental pathologies.
Yeah. It can be comorbid. Comorbid is the word I learned. It can just dwell with other disorders and just be there. Like let's say an eating disorder can be there with like anxiety. I guess those could be tied. Schizophrenia. Who knows? Could be with insomnia. I don't know. I'm just looking at my grab bag of mental disorders here.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff in this. Nick, did you have? I know you brought something interesting.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about a specific study revolving around depression and anxiety in terminally ill cancer patients. Okay. That New York University and Johns Hopkins University conducted these studies. 2 separate studies. They were very similar to each other in the way they administered them. What did I say?
Johns Hopkins.
Did I say Johns Hopkins?
Yeah.
Johns Hopkins. When I type it out, I do it right.
No, it's okay.
So the one for...
Does Johns Hopkins have a name?
You offended.
I think it's Johns. I don't know.
No.
My bad.
It's his Hopkins, right?
Like with apostrophe S.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I'm confused.
All right, thank you.
This is causing mental illness in me.
So anyway, there were 2 studies done. They were double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. Each study had 2 groups of people, and they were all terminally ill cancer patients. So these are people that know they're going to die from the cancer they have, right? Almost 100%. Like maybe a miracle happens or something, but their doctors have told them you will die sooner or later from this disease, right? And so it required a lot of. This was in 2016. It required quite a bit of hoops they had to jump through, a lot of red tape they had to cut through, because the substance that they used to treat it was psilocybin, which is derived from various mushrooms. Specifically, ergot is the type of fungus that produces this substance. And of course, that's illegal. It's Class 1 or Schedule 1 rather. Illegal substance, right, in the United States. So they did get sanctioned to perform these studies, and here and there studies are being conducted. And so what they did is they had one of the groups had a placebo. It was just like a sugar pill kind of thing, like a vitamin B3, and then the other one was a significant dose of psilocybin. And they put them in a nice comfortable room. They put blindfold on them and nice, like, pleasant music. It was very, very, happy music. And they did have trained clinicians that were there to administer to them. But one of the interesting parts of this study was that the administrators or the therapists tending to them were not told whether they were given a placebo or not. They just said, "Here, give them this little pill. They all look the same." And then just tend to them as you're trained to tend to them, right? And another interesting thing about that was that they, in other therapies, there's a lot of talking. It's like, oh, well, what do you think about that? Well, and there's this back and forth dialogue kind of thing. And with this substance, they just let the brain reorganize and fix itself, because that's the nature of this substance. Is it makes these new connections, like where you get caught in a negative feedback loop. Mm-hmm. That's literally neurons in your brain that get programmed over time to do a repetitive motion that's detrimental to itself. And what they found with this substance is that it allows the brain, like certain parts shut down so that other parts can grow and make reconnections. And we still don't understand exactly how it's doing this, but it's making connections in a way that you wouldn't expect. It seems to be very organized, very productive. And so anyway, the results of the study basically ended up with 68 to 80% of the people had a significant decline in depression or anxiety that lasted 6 months after the study. They all reported to be more optimistic. They had altered relationships for the positive. a better relationship with the concept of their own mortality. They felt life was more meaningful, and they all expressed these feelings of love and connection with the outside world, with other people, with everything around them. So some of the negatives they said were, some of them were very benign. Like there was periods where people would have, like, especially when the test first began, when someone first started to feel it taking effect, they'd have a moment of paranoia and they'd be scared, like what's going on. But then the therapist would just grab their hand and just say, I'm here, it's fine. And then they'd be like, okay, and they calm down. And the clinicians try to be very hands-off, though, because it's all about the person's mind repairing itself, which is a dramatic departure from psychotropics as we know them, as we've known them for decades. Psychotropics, they have all they really do is mask a lot of symptoms. They turn people into different people. They numb feelings. They cause other detriments in the other parts of their life. So
let's be clear though. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the psychotropics.
Yeah.
They also really help a lot.
No, for sure, and it's better than nothing. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't trying to make it sound like that.
I've heard accounts of people who they're like, you maybe you're numb, but it helps you stabilize.
Right. Absolutely. No, I'm not demonizing that at all. Just saying that there's better ways.
Psilocybin is not a psychotropic. What is it?
No, it's psychedelic.
Psychedelic.
Yeah, psychedelic.
What is the Della?
I don't know the etymology of it.
Oh,
You got me on that one. But this is by all accounts, a natural way that it gets out of the way of the brain to replenish and repair its neurons. It allows the brain to repair its own neurons rather than blocking serotonin receptors, SSRIs, and that kind of thing. I'm no scientist. I don't understand everything about it, and there's still a lot of mystery to it. Yeah. All that we know is that results of it were these people came out still knowing that they were going to die of cancer, but being very happy and optimistic and grateful. There was a lot of words of connection, love, gratitude, and they said they'd come to terms with their anxiety. Now, 6 months after the study, some people went back and they started feeling depressed again. But what they all noted is that now they found something that felt like a legitimate boost, like a healthy elevation to a treatment, rather than the side effects that happen with psychotropics, which is you feel numb, you feel lethargic, you feel standoffish or whatever, which can get you through. But so that was it. I was going to read some of the quotes from some of the people, but I basically summed up what they had said. This was an NYU study and a Johns Hopkins study, double-blind, placebo-controlled. You can look it up. It'll pop right up if you look it up. Yeah.
Okay, so we already talked about drug setup. I don't want to rehash all the same arguments, but if you're talking about shutting off certain parts of the brain so that it can restructure other parts, it seems to me that's just another way of saying you could also twist that as brain damage. So you're basically you could say, no, don't let me finish what I'm going to say. No. You could say that's basically inflicting brain damage that people can feel better. No.
You're temporarily turning off certain parts of the brain.
Let me clarify what I mean. So that's you're messing with the hardware of your brain.
Yeah.
And it's risky. So
yeah.
I'm much more. I don't think that people should take from that study that I'm going to go do a bunch of mushrooms now, because that was.
I didn't say that.
Yeah,
I didn't say that.
That was a Hopkins study.
You definitely should do this under supervision of a guided therapist, of someone who's trained and knows exactly all the different parameters of it. You wouldn't just let's find some mushrooms out in the.
It's worth looking
in the pasture.
I'm not.
No. These treatments are very promising. It's in its infancy still.
The analogy between neural pathways and hardware is a little problematic as well, because if it is hardware, then your brain makes its own hardware every day. I mean, we make new neural pathways anytime we learn something, or we make they found different kind of connections anytime you connect to different kinds of information that previously you had held in isolation. So if you're saying, I guess in my brain I do picture it like as the negative feedback loop or something, where somebody's trapped in this cycle of having the wrong hardwired response, that compulsive behavior when something comes. To disrupt that, it's just like shaking up the Etch-a-Sketch. I could see the logic of that.
That's one way of saying it.
Terminally ill, it's going to be.
Oh yeah, I forgot that fact. They're all dying anyway.
Terminally ill. Plus, it's for science, and hey, they might feel love and connection. That is what struck me, because depression, I know, is.
They all said that. They all said connection. Like every single one of their testimonials.
Having a problem like feeling a connection or feeling love, something that sounds so, I don't know, weird to a normal person, depressed, that matters, so to them, that
it's everything. It's everything.
Really crazy now if none of them died from whatever illness they
Whoa. Oh my God, the brain repaired itself too well. They're out of control. They take over the world.
Oh my gosh.
No, but what it appears to be doing is allowing the brain to rebuild itself, not to just like shake it up, but to actually
that's
rebuild.
The theory. That's the spin. I mean,
neurons are being regenerated.
Things are happening in the hardware there. Okay, not hardware, the software.
All right, you're skeptical. I get it.
It's Johns Hopkins. That's cool.
That's
go
the
for it.
that's
Keep
the
it
premier medical.
I like that. Yeah,
research
do that
facility.
Research, but I just.
Don't worry, it will continue.
Yeah.
It will soldier on.
Nick will ensure. It will.
I've got big ideas. I've got big plans.
I guess I've been a little paranoid with that stuff.
Yeah, maybe this is just the beginnings of some new further development. This chemical.
I'm going to go on record and say it is the beginning of a very bright and beautiful future for PTSD, depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses.
Nice. Yeah.
Just as long as it doesn't take away. I guess the other reason it makes me a little bit queasy is I'm worried that it's going to take away the focus of the other things in life that can cure those things that have nothing to do with altering your chemistry. Well, like with taking drugs, like
meditation,
cognitive therapy, or finding spiritual significance in life, or building healthy relationships with people.
It's very interesting you should say that. Very interesting you should say that.
Part of the reason, I have gone through periods of depression in my life. Absolutely. Yeah. I've never taken any type of medication for it. And it's mainly because I found the therapy, if you will, in the people in my life. And I guess part of what, like I said, what makes me queasy about that whole field of research is I'm afraid it's going to distract from the larger social problems, the societal problems that lead to people feeling alienated, or like they can't get support, or like they're disproportionately afraid of dying. And actually that ties into the article the Ben Sass article that you shared, an epidemic of loneliness.
Real quick before we jump in that though, I don't think any tool should be cast aside. I think they all have a place if they are indeed a productive, useful tool. And as far as getting distracted by it, I'm not worried about it. Don't be worried about that. And you're right. We do need to fix our loneliness problem, right?
That's fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. So my first question for you guys, since what I picked was I've seen tons of articles lately of the epidemic of loneliness, and it's called a health crisis, and it's you maybe have to work. Yeah. So do you guys agree with the nomenclature, even of putting it in the health crisis or mental health category? Because
yes,
I feel like that's a little strange. So how do you see that? How do you define? How do
I see it? Wow, I feel like I've been talking for a lot. That's 5 minutes straight, and I get 5 more minutes. Yes. Well, because I have personally experienced the extreme toll that loneliness can have in your outlook on life, especially when I was on nights and I was not surrounding myself with the greatest people, and those relationships ended up not working out, and I was alone for a long time, and it's not healthy. Like I know, I can see the difference. I think about who I was in those dark times compared to where I am now, where I have a good relationship with my family. I have you guys. I have my classmates and professors and other friends or relationships that have sort of blossomed in the last couple of years.
I mean, I guess the direction I would want to push it is
on a macro scale.
It seems like the loneliness is a symptom of some other thing. It's already a symptom.
Capitalism, just like Marx said.
There's a lot of lonely people in the Soviet
It's that bourgeoisie lifestyle. Just kidding. I can't. I did actually think. Remember when we studied about that? This article that I read on Ben Sass made me think of Marx's words about once we've got everything we want, now we'll just be, and then you'd think it'd be great, but we could have issues, right? I'm not going to say it's necessarily related, but that's piqued my interest.
That's a good point because my whole generation thinks that that's literally what this is. But let's take a look at the things that have broken down. A lot of broken families, super high divorce rate. Mm-hmm. What are we going to attribute that to capitalism, or are we going to contribute that to Marxian critical theories?
I mean, if Marx was here, he'd probably say, "Yeah, you could contribute broken families to capitalism." But I'm not trying to be. I'm not speaking for Marx. Don't make me Mr. Marx man right now.
And this,
okay,
is this a
devil's advocate?
Well, it could be, part of a larger question there for sure. But I don't know. I'm not willing to go into the pros and cons of capitalism at this time.
No, yeah, we've done that episode.
We definitely can do that, but
why are there broken families though? It's definitely seems like a root cause of a lot of.
Keep it cultural, at the society level. What's wrong within the culture that would cause?
What are people thinking? Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm thrusting myself back in the spotlight again, but I think I've been fairly open that I definitely struggle with my faith, but I do think that a massive amount of the loneliness and the alienation and meaninglessness that people feel in our society is higher than it was 50 years ago, and I think a lot of it has to do with people being lost in the consequences of like a postmodernist haze, where you're just drifting around in reality and you have nothing to latch onto.
What if it's technology? I mean, look how lost we're in technology.
Technology has a huge impact on like we were just talking about, the brain reacts to this instant gratification stuff.
Check our phones every 4 minutes, right? On average.
So that definitely is having an effect. I know.
That's your article, dude. Don't get mad at me.
I was looking up the article.
That was literally Ben Sass' article.
Yeah.
No, it's just what we face, right? Like, we're not getting rid of these devices and this technology. It's made our lives easier, but there's a consequence to it, I think. I feel like there's definitely a consequence to it. Video games are amazing. They're fun. They're great. I got my Xbox over there. But somehow down the line, I figured out a way to only do it once in a great while. I don't know. I can't say that I knew how I did that, honestly. Maybe I just wasn't as susceptible. But,
we're not just talking for ourselves, too. We're also talking about society as a whole. I know for me, I was able to sort of break that cycle because I happened to have the resources I needed to do that. But there's a lot of people that don't have that.
Yeah.
And that ties into the opioid crisis that we're in the midst of.
Oh yeah, for
people not having the capability to deal with these new stressors, this loneliness. We're the lucky ones.
So
opioids would fill that gap, right?
Yeah. Part of the reason that I picked this is even though I think the loneliness itself is yet another symptom.
It's like
the book
Catch-22. Like, which was it? Which thing was it that caused it? Right.
Which I think would be worth trying to pinpoint that. Just kind of spitball. But first, so the way that this is Ben Sass's second book in as many years. He's one of the senators from Nebraska. I believe he's going to run in 2024. Go Ben Sass. But his first book was, what was it called? Vanishing of the American Adult or something. Something like that.
Nick's house does not publicly endorse any candidate or anyone running for any office.
Yeah,
especially never Trumpers.
I think
except Elizabeth Warren.
Jordan read the book. He said it was pretty good, not like super deep, but interesting, worthwhile. But his more recent book, which I found an article.
By the way, he went to John's school.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I actually forgot that right now.
Yeah.
We are both.
You told us that.
We're alumni of St. John's. Yeah. His most recent book is called "Them: Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal." And so he claims that the largest health crisis in America right now is not any of the other things that we list, but is loneliness, because he sees loneliness as the thing that is leading people to become addicted to drugs, to become addicted to. They're trying to fill the hole that other people should in their lives, and I think that makes sense, and it's problematic because I see why it would be easier to try to treat all of the little problems that come from it rather than treat loneliness, because we're not just going to invent friendliness robots to go and fix the loneliness problem. And you can't pay people to go spend time with all the lonely people, but some of the stats that
and you can't guilt people into doing it either.
No.
Hey, you should help your society and go be nice to your neighbor.
Yes.
Like it doesn't work like that.
But yeah, so some of the stats that they gave is that it significantly lowers your life expectancy twice as much as heavy drinking and 3 times more than obesity. It is certain research has suggested that loneliness is physically as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It contributes to cognitive decline, including more rapid advance of Alzheimer's and other stuff like that. So, Senator Sass puts it in these terms: we're literally dying of despair to fill the hole millions of Americans feel in their lives. And he goes on to make a broader political point that that's why politics are so tribal, is because people are trying to stuff political identity in that hole and to feel like connected to their political alliances, because that makes them feel more a part of something bigger. But
it's not enough, though.
So, and it's pretty encouraging to see a politician saying, "Listen, politics is not the answer." Yeah. I mean, no. I mean, he still thinks that America would be better if we did things his way, like every other politician does. But he is very upfront with the fact that that's not the answer, and the main reason I like him is I am convinced, so far as one can be about another, that his motivations are actually to serve America, and he's very civil towards people that he disagrees with. He didn't speak the first entire year he was on the Senate floor, because that used to be tradition. They've since done away with that. But the junior senators, they would just listen to what the other people had to say, and any talking that he did, he would go to their offices and have sit down face to face, so that he could kind of more humbly listen to what they had to say. And it's just showing respect for people who've put in the time. And so I mean, he's got his PhD in history, and he frankly I think is too good to be a senator, but he's kind of like, hey guys, let's fix this. But yeah, so I'm curious now if anybody had thoughts on how loneliness contributes to all the other things that we're talking about. Probably not to autism. I don't. But anxiety.
Vaccines make autism. Everybody knows that.
Or depression, or bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia.
Yeah,
a number of disorders.
But and loneliness itself, if it is a symptom, could we attribute it to one single thing, or is it just a ton of different causes?
It just seems to me it's just one big circling catch-22. Like, was it loneliness that caused this? Was it the breakdown of the family that caused this? Was it the advent of technology that caused this? I mean, I feel like it's impossible to figure out.
For sure.
It's a big swirling thing.
The exact cause.
Yeah.
This is certainly.
We could try them.
Well, and I promise I won't make this into a long diatribe, but a lot of urban developers attribute to breakdown in social ties to the way that we've been building our cities for the last 60 plus years. So where we used to have these densely populated city cores where people would interact with, you walk down the street and you pass 50 people every single day, and you talk to your neighbor, you talk to the shoe shiner, blah blah blah, and a lot of it, some people attribute it to how we've decentralized our cities and we have
cars,
urban sprawl, suburban. You spend hours in your car every day. So
I feel like when I drive through Baltimore,
that's a contributing factor, but I don't think that's enough to.
I don't know, because I walk by people every day, and we don't talk because that's weird.
It wasn't.
No, I know, but I don't think it's the way that the cities are built or the way that my office building is built. So, like, I had the weirdest encounter the other day. There are a lot of wall touchers where I work. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have just people that like are so socially awkward that they would literally hug the wall to avoid walking near enough you that might be.
I've done that.
Say hello.
You check your armpits.
I've got my reasons why I touch the wall sometimes. All right, don't judge me.
And
it's scary. In the center of the.
In the center of the hallway. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Some people thrash their elbows.
These days, I'm somewhat outgoing. That was very much a conscious choice, but rooting back to pretty much in college, that time that I was talking about. Well, I'm not going to be able to have good relationships with people and make difference in their lives unless I talk to them. So I try, and like even today, I got into the elevator. There was a lady already on there, and I just don't have the skills. There's some people, that all these tiny chit chat encounters, they make you feel so special. Like once in a blue moon, somebody will get on the elevator and be like, "How's it going, buddy?" Yeah. And I'm like, "I don't know." And then they just say random stuff, and maybe we'll get to one actually meaningful point before we hit B1 where we're headed. And but I'll walk out of the building feeling like, wow, like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah,
like, that was neat. And I don't.
But you feel like you're behind it. You're like, man, I wish I was.
Yeah, exactly.
But next time you're more ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no. But then I know that I am capable. I could work at being like that. And so today I got in the elevator and I was like, yeah, I'll just pull out my phone. And I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it was just like, I don't know what to say.
We all do it.
Yeah.
You're not the only one, dude.
But I think that people need to be taught that they can and actually have a responsibility to work on that, to be better at putting yourself out of your comfort zone.
To help other people feel more comfortable around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what that just reminded me of? Sorry to bring it this way, but Dennis Prager, I don't know anyone.
I'm familiar with him.
We all know Dennis Prager.
Soros,
I can't believe you lumped him in with George Soros. I'd never heard anyone do that, but why not? Let's go for it.
He was a radio, I believe, got his start in radio. But anyway, now he's kind of old and he knows a lot. So.
Yeah, I used to listen to him all the time on radio.
Really? He said.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Huh.
I was big into AM radio back in the day. Big.
Okay. He said that each person has a responsibility to act happy even if you're not, because what you show on the outside can affect others. And it kind of tied in with that thing even
I get that sentiment, but I've heard that and I don't like it because you're not being honest, right?
That's true.
Maybe you should work on why you're not happy and just think, well, what's going on.
It better than I can. I definitely probably didn't.
Well, we're gonna attack you for your own, so just take it.
Yeah, he said
act happy.
Just smile or I don't know.
It's probably not even natural to be happy all the time.
How do
right?
you answer the skeptics, Andrew, in your own words?
The skeptics of what?
You should smile for the sake of other people.
Oh, yeah. I don't really. Is it that important to
Hi, stranger.
to show your disapproval of
Smiling.
the current situation? Do you have to bring everyone else down? That's my question to those who don't feel like they have to act happy or whatever. Even faking it sometimes can go towards that just all around prevent loneliness thing, I don't know. Trying to tie it back into loneliness.
There was a girl in high school. This reminds me exactly what you just said. Reminds me of this girl in high school. Her name was Emily. I won't say her last name to protect her identity. And she was that person, like kind of you said earlier. Like she walks into a room and she's just exuding love for everybody. And you watch it and you're like, where does this come from? And one time, because I was pretty good friends with her, and I talked to her one-on-one about it. And I'm like, where do you get the constant positive vibes? And she said, well, someone taught me a long time ago, just like when you wake up in the morning, just make a choice. Even if you're not feeling good about it, just make a choice and you just force it. And then as the day goes on, it might start to click. And for her, it took her the first hour of the day of faking it, but then it all came together for her.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Fake it till you make it.
I've tried that. Even if I felt like absolute dirt, walk around kind of smiling at people, you'll get a smile back, and that brings you up. Both up,
Unless you get shot.
Okay, well,
so
jeez.
We're back at the feedback loop.
Exactly.
If you I
Reward system.
I hit a wall a couple of years ago. I was just so sick of meeting new people. I just didn't make an effort. Unfortunately, that was also at the same time that I started at a new school, so it was just bad timing. And I know like there's difference when your body language, people look at you and they can tell a lot just by the way that you're walking and the look on your face and the way you're hunched over or not hunched over, and you just get such a different experience when you are trying to show with your body language that
you want to be there.
You want to be there.
Yeah,
and you're not going to bite people's heads off if they try to interact with you. It's the difference between everyone staring at you with like looks of like nervousness or just curiosity.
Well, and I think what you said, like about how you can get exhausted from just trying to be interacting with so many people.
Yeah,
there's a what's called Dunbar's number. It's I don't know what you're gonna say about this, but it's the study of our history and how we for so many thousands of years, millions of years, whatever, were in certain sized groups where we were intimate with like 100 to 150 or so people. I think Dunbar's number is literally like 150. And once you pass that number, you get towards that number, your literal brain starts to just be like, I can't handle this. It's too many people to be actually genuinely connected with. And I guess in a global society, that does not work very well. That's gonna really tax the mind, right?
Yeah.
I would like to ask, is it dishonest to fake it? Is it dishonest? Or is that relevant?
Relevant. The way that I would frame it is,
that's a good question.
When I was in elementary school, I had it in my head that grooming myself was phony.
Yeah, I had the same thing when I was
that like I don't care what other people think of me. If they're gonna judge me because I didn't comb my hair, screw them. And my mom kind of let me. My mom let me do that, and I look back at photos of myself from that. Oh my gosh! And then one day, I don't know if somebody told me this or something else, but I realized I'm not the one that friggin' has to look at me all day. Like, other people have to look at this mess. Like, I noticed myself in the mirror, and I was like, ew.
Yeah.
Like, I for a split second, like, I didn't recognize it as me or something, and I was like, ooh, who is that guy? Yeah. And I was like, oh, other people have that same reaction every day. And
all day long.
I'm putting an impediment in the way of it being easy for them to see me as a human being worthy of love. So...
Or just that's another thing I realized too. Like everyone at my school, I swear to God, every single person wears expensive athletic gear. That's the uniform of college kids these days. I don't dress. I wear jeans. I wear a knit sweater. I stick out like a sore thumb. So that's always a question for me. Is like,
but being hipster is cool too.
If I were to change the way I dressed, it would feel like I'd rather be dragged across glass than do that. Broken glass than do that.
Yeah.
But would that open up a whole new world of social opportunities? Because it's, in a way, it's like it makes me think of the parable in the Bible of the wedding guests who show up to a wedding and they refuse to wear the wedding gear and they get kicked out. It's like, well, when you enter into a community and you refuse to dress like them, that's kind of in a way it's kind
learn
of
English or get out.
It's in a matter of speaking, it's a language.
I said learn English or get out. Is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe.
It's tribal man. Tribal man.
That has too many. Learn. I don't know. Chinese or get. No, that has too many. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Tribal man. Tribal human is going to do that
it's an
most of the
expression
time.
of I'm here. I have observed you. I understand you, and I'm going to conform. This is an outward. It's an outward expression of the reality that I'm going to submit to your way of living.
It's not even conformity because, even if you're a minority, you're part. You contribute to the society. Society includes you, even if there are certain ways in which you're possibly being systematically excluded. You still tip the scales one way or the other. It's always a negotiation.
It's always going to happen.
Yeah, and so I see what you're talking about, Jordan, as buy-in, societal buy-in to your say, okay, I'm game. I'm putting something on the table. I'm willing to negotiate. I'm trying here. And I think people can tell. You need to be careful because a lot of the people who put up that social capital that everybody can see don't actually give a rat's ass, about reaching out to other people for their own sake. But
right.
I mean,
that's their own tribalism. They're susceptible to.
It's a visual shorthand, of taking care of yourself, of not sticking out if you can help it too much, But I don't know.
Yeah, and once you go past that,
for the wrong reasons. Yeah.
Once you, I mean, you do what you can, and then the rest is in their court. I mean, that's the exchange of social interaction, right?
Yeah.
And if they say, well, you didn't learn enough about how we need you to be, well, maybe the onus is on them. I mean, it's hard to say, but when you do everything you can, you've done everything you can, right? Like that's it. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Then you become an incel and you.
You say F everything. I'm going in the basement, locking the doors.
I mean, up to the point that
it would be easier.
The way you dress, I can understand that. It's kind of like grooming, but like a step further, like your clothes and whatnot. But like, I think grooming or whatever is probably the closest metaphor to like putting on a smile. In my
that's that's really important.
Yeah.
Getting right now I have a rat's nest of a beard on my face, but to take the time to find like a hairstyle that works for you, to trim your facial hair so that it's well kempt, to make sure that your clothes are somewhat coordinated and somewhat current, not too out of fashion or whatever, too ridiculous looking. That is. I used to make fun of people who did that, but now I realize you're doing it as a courtesy to others, like you said, because they have to look at you. And it also says a lot about who you are. It shows that you have that attention to detail, and that you can show up and you can work with people.
Yeah, it gets you dates too.
That's true.
It tends to help with that.
It does.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten any dates recently.
So I've heard.
I mean, we're still subject to the visual. So as soon as I see you walking down the street, that's all I have so far to go off. It's like, well, this guy stinks and he looks terrible.
Yeah.
Well, he probably does. I should probably stand back. I should probably watch out. He might not respect himself or me.
There's
right? That could be a thing.
So we've gone pretty far afield from mental health, but
it's connected.
Yeah.
I think what this
I think it's connected.
is a discussion of loneliness in society.
Yeah.
Which is vaguely connected to mental health, but we're probably going to have to recap.
Definitely connected.
I really want to do my crappy retelling of a college humor video. Have you guys ever seen College Humor?
Yeah.
The little skits. They've got this one. I don't know if this is even a myth among guys, but they're making fun of a purported myth among guys that driving a nice car is because you're compensating for something. So if you drive a crappy car, you must be really confident in what you're packing. And so they have this thing of the crappier the car is, these girls are like, oh, and they're like, is that a bunch of Taco Bell wrappers in your bag? And he's like, yeah, huh?
Yeah. Did that on purpose.
Sure. Smart car. So does that mean we should all get smart cars?
I don't believe that's switched yet. It just hasn't happened yet.
It'll happen.
You still have to drive a Ferrari.
That was in that Ben Sass article talking about people losing their jobs because of automation. Or was that your article? Sorry, I might be confusing the two.
No, it was him. I think it's him.
Yeah.
He's
right.
He is all about being proactive. He's like, guys, I'm a history major. I've seen this happen over and over. You need to prepare for the disintermediation, is what he calls. I think I looked it up one time. I don't really remember what it means, but changing the supply chains, like taking out the middleman, basically. So like Uber, disintermediation.
Okay.
If everything switched to Uber, suddenly a lot of people would lose their jobs, stuff like that. Same with any kind of automation or new business models. There's disintermediation. A whole chain in the supply chain is taken out, and suddenly there are a lot of jobs lost. So he is very much about, we need to have a plan. America is not good about having plans about, okay, look, we're headed towards this cliff.
Yeah.
Let's do something about it. And it's funny because I've only heard Democrats talk about that, and so to hear a Republican, very conservative Republican, talk about that, it's like, wow, yeah, that's so cool.
I have mixed feelings about that.
Yeah.
That relate to economics and questions of capitalism and stuff, but
he is kind of.
He doesn't want to throw more regulation on it. He's not like, hey, let's make more rules for Ubers.
Yeah.
He's trying to implore the societal side of us.
Think about this. Let's be cognizant of what this thing that is about to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, and so he's really big on possibly shifting the model for education and certifications because he's like, people are going to need to rapidly change to a new job. He also is very big on changing healthcare to where your healthcare plan is something that's portable, because he said in the next couple of years people are going to be leaving jobs every year. He's like, you're going to only be in a job for a set amount of time because our economy is going to pick up and change so rapidly. He's like, people right now who are in their 50s might have to retire soon just because they're not going to be able to keep up with the rate at which they're expected to learn new skills.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into his stump speech that is now here 6 years out from his 2024 run, but I think every single point that he has in his speech that he's preparing is
You think that he's going to run for president?
Yeah, 2024.
Eventually.
No, 2024. I'm pretty
we'll
sure.
see.
That makes sense.
A lot can happen in 6 years.
I think he's letting America have its lost weekend with
with the blonde bimbo that
with
likes
the
to
blonde
snort coke off of the
exactly
the surfboard and
I don't
then
think he's gonna try
accidentally
to insert
drown
himself into this because he might just end up. Yeah.
Well, he has always been anti-Trump, so that is an important.
But it would only. I think he's smart enough to know it would be getting down in the pig pen if he tried to run in 2 years. So that's what.
I definitely agree. So, but that's we should talk about that after this cast because I actually want to talk about that.
Well, I think we're just about done talking about mental health. So that's it. Thanks for joining us. Unless you had something to say.
Anyone? Yeah.
The lunatic
that'll be
is in the grass.
It puts the lotion on its skin. What? Name that mental illness. It puts the lotion on its skin.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Cannibalism. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
What are you talking about?
It's Silence of the Lambs. This is a movie.
Okay.
It's a famous movie.
Right.
Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
Buffalo Bill refuses to call his victims by their names because then he starts feeling for them. So
Are you still recording? Okay. Okay, so on the subject of Trump,
let me stop this.
I heard some news that surprised me a lot today. Trump has a higher approval rating than Obama did at the same point in his presidency.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he by several
From
points.
polls.
Yeah,